Mike, welcome. Thanks for coming and joining us at Transform.
Good to be here.
Yeah. Mike, I'm going to kick this off with a broad question, because I know you've been in the AI platforms world probably before anybody else in terms of calling out the need for enterprise AI platforms and kicking off that entire wave and evaluation process. This is a time for such significant change in AI. So many innovations being introduced so rapidly. Can you tell us about your perspectives on where you see the AI platform market going and what you see the future looking like?
Yeah, so I've been evaluating AI platforms for about 10 years, but 10 years ago, we didn't call it an AI platform, we called it machine learning platform. Yeah. And the biggest arc that I've seen in these platforms is it went from a platform primarily designed for data scientists, and the output of that data scientist was a model that would be used elsewhere. But then starting about 3 or 4 years ago, many vendors started to output more solutions. And then, of course, now we have LLMs, and now we have agentic. So the biggest transformation, though, has been in this last year with the focus on agentic AI, because now companies are insisting that their AI platform accommodate agents. Agents that are assistants, interacting with humans, but also autonomous agents that can either become a workflow, participate in a workflow, call each other, and certainly integrate with an enterprise environment. So when I do evaluations, the Forrester Wave, our criteria spans that entire set of capabilities needed to create custom AI solutions. We look at accelerators, but we also look at it architecturally, because enterprises have an extraordinarily complex system of applications, data sources, so it has to make connections to that, and especially to take action, which is what you want agents to do.
Yeah. So are you really seeing an expansion? Because now we have the traditional AI platforms, and then you have the workflows.
Yeah, I mean, it's very different. I'm looking at vendors now that I haven't looked at before. There's some new startup vendors based upon agents. Some of the companies that I've covered for years that they're doubling down on data science, which means they're not as relevant. So yeah, there's a lot of, and everyone saying we do agents. Every vendor, technology vendor, says we do agents in some way. So it is hard to, for companies to navigate that, and that's my job, is to help our clients navigate this changing landscape.
Yeah. So one more question along those lines is, talk to us a little bit about what you view as the future of predictive models, of predictive ML in that context.
So predictive ML, still incredibly relevant, because it's a tool. You need to predict stuff based upon large sums of data. Sometimes that's quantitative. So, LLMs can maybe do that a little bit if given a data set, but they're not very good at it, especially when you're trying to make predictions in real time. I noticed, I don't know if it was one of your pillars this morning, but it said real time. I don't know, it's one of the, absolutely. Because when you have a system of agents that's now starting to run your business, it needs to react to the business events that's occurring now. But I would go further and not just say predictive, but you've got any and all technologies that will help make a decision. And that's the whole concept of an agent using a tool as well, is to use whatever is best, whatever is most relevant.
Super helpful, Mike. Tell us, there's been a lot of discussion over the last year on pilot purgatory and ROI, that companies are, just doing these pilots and not securing the ROI. I have a sense that things are starting to change, but I'm curious to get your views on what you're seeing.
It's so annoying, actually, because it's like, Mike, we're struggling to get ROI. Yeah, well, what are you doing, actually? Well, we're rolling out Copilot. It's like, that's not, it's important to roll out a tool that 5,000 employees can use. I'm not, nothing against that.
Yeah.
But those aren't serious projects. I mean, that's a little bit like, okay, we're going to roll out Lotus Notes. I mean, it's better than that. But it's not a concerted focus on a particular serious problem that the company has where ROI can be calculated. So, I mean, employees can definitely get productivity by using these tools personally, but that is very difficult to calculate. My focus, and especially on the platforms, is not that type of rollout. It's the type of problems that have a large ROI, and companies already know how to calculate ROI.
Yeah.
And they just have to focus on the right problems.
Yeah. No, I would echo that, Mike. I'm really seeing the focus shift now to those high-value use cases.
Yeah.
And of course, the productivity is important, but I think there's much more awareness that an LLM by itself is not going to.
Well, and I always say the least important decision is what LLM you use. and a lot of people make that the most important decision. And it's changing very quickly. Yeah, I mean, one model dominates. One thing we've learned in the last couple of years is no one can dominate. No one has dominated the LLM space. So it does have to be pluggable.
Yes.
But there are companies spending an inordinate amount of time deciding which LLM they should use. You know which one you should use? The best one at the time.
Yeah. So sitting here in March, actually, 2026, what's your view, Mike, on what agentic AI and these workflows, agentic workflows, do to enterprises? Like, what's
every enterprise will be run by a system of agents, and I'm including assistive agents as well. So it's not fully autonomous, but it is the next step in enterprise architecture. So everything will be an agent. Agents will interact with each other. They'll interact with existing architecture through tools. Every employee will be using agents. So it's going to be a complete agent overlay to an organization. And eventually, there'll be the type of agents that will be monitoring business results and proactively making decisions about how agents should be deployed, how processes should be changed. So everything is going to be agents.
No, we agree, we concur. And the agent orchestration and openness, I think, becomes really important in that context.
Well, yeah, it's very important because there's no winner take all with agents, right? Because that build-buy decision, very important for a company. And there's going to be business software like an accounting system that someone uses, and that vendor isn't sitting there saying, well, I think I'll sit out agents. No, they're building agents that maybe help with payables or HR, right? But those agents also need to interact with operational systems as well. So yes, there's going to have to be massive interoperability between agents because an enterprise is going to build some in multiple platforms. They're going to buy some in business software, and they're all going to have to interact with each other. And there are emerging standards like A2A, agent-to-agent protocol. People are probably familiar with MCP for the tools. And there'll be other standards emerging, but interoperability of agents is a must.
Got it. So I know we're approaching time, so one last question for you. I know you've given a lot of thought to this, but the importance of data and ontologies in the enterprise context. Maybe you could
They're kind of two separate questions.
Yeah, I collapsed them into one because of time.
Yeah. But the first thing I'll talk about is the ontologies, because that, you guys have been talking about this like since the beginning.
The very beginning.
And I've always said, why isn't anyone else talking about this? Because it's critical, because that is the representation of your assets, of your other systems, of what's happening in the business. So maybe you could take that or leave that. I mean, I thought it was important at the time. Now it's absolutely, it's essential, because now that's how agents interact with a customer, with the product, with inventory, and with the other systems. So you have to have an ontology that's a model of the business. And on the data side, I'll keep that very short, which is, companies feel like they can outsource what's their most important IP, their intelligence, to an LLM. I'm like, what? So you've got people making, oh, I have a partnership with this company or that company. Well, what are you saying? Are you saying that you no longer have the IP, the intelligence, that it's all going to be outsourced to some LLM that actually doesn't have your data? So it's critical to use your IP and your data because that LLM was not trained on what your business. And people say, well, I'll use RAG. That's one approach. But I see a lot of evidence that companies are going to be able to build their own models, maybe not from scratch, but use techniques like reinforcement learning, maybe to build their own model for $5 or $10 million on top of, say, an open source model.
Yep. No, very, very, very helpful. Thank you, Mike. Thanks for sharing your insights. Sure. Thanks for joining us here at Transform. Really appreciate it.
Good to be here. Thank you. Thank you.